2024 Troy City Council meeting. This evening we're going to have invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please remain standing. Ellen, if you can do the invocation.
Father God, in our beautiful, diverse community filled with multiple faith traditions and practices, please place your guidance over all of us. Specifically, please be with us tonight and guide us in our thoughts, ideas, and decision-making. Bless all who are present here in the council chamber, as well as those watching online. Be with us, and as always, please be with all of our first responders, our police, our fire, EMS, and our DPW team that supports them all. Please protect them as they work to serve and protect all of us. We ask this in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ellen, for the invocation. I'll call the December 9th, 2024 Troy City Council meeting to order and ask for the roll call. Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker. Councilmember Brooks.
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Krenga.
Here.
Councilmember Chanda.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn.
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Here.
We've been informed Mayor Baker's absence due to a medical situation. I would propose resolve that the Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Ethan Baker at the regular City Council meeting of December 9th, 2024 due to medical situation.
Support.
Roll call. Or,
Any
You
discussion?
would ask for discussion.
oh, discussion. Sorry.
No.
No discussion. Ask for the vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Krenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn.
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Let's see here. First up, we have certificates of recognition and special presentations. C1, EMS feasibility study presentation presented by Pete Hollinger and Fire Chief and Steve Knight, Fitch and Associates.
All right, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Tonight we're going to present to you the EMS feasibility that has been studied over the last year. So it'll be myself and Dr. Steve Knight from Fitch and Associates. But just before we get going on that, I just wanted to do a little brief history on EMS in the city of Troy for everybody's recognition and acknowledgement. The history of EMS in Troy is a journey of adaptation and service of evolution. Our first ambulance service was provided by Price Funeral Home from October of 1956 until June of 1974. While it may seem unusual today, it was common for funeral homes to offer ambulance services until 1966, when the National Highway Safety Act shifted the focus from mere patient transportation to professional emergency medical care. The timeline of EMS in Troy reflects our city's continuous efforts to improve public safety. Although it's unclear exactly when the Troy Fire Department began responding to medical calls, former Fire Chief Bill Nelson recalled that the fire department managed these calls until about 1968, when the responsibility was transferred to the police department. Significant changes came in 1980 when the city began contracting for advanced life support services. In 1993, driven by new EMS licensing requirements, Troy reevaluated its options and published an EMS request for proposals. The initiative aimed for performance-based response for one-person medical first responder units. That year, the contract was awarded to ParaMed, and in 2003, Alliance Mobile Health took over, continuing the service until May of 2024. Currently, Universal Ambulance has acquired Alliance and provides both ALS ambulances and one medical first responder unit. Remarkably, since adapting this EMS model in 1993, there has been no comprehensive professional evaluation to assess its effectiveness or compare it to current needs. Even before the pandemic reshaped EMS nationwide, challenges were evident. The pandemic further strained resources, underscoring the need for a thorough analysis of the Troy EMS framework. Recognizing these challenges, the fire department and city management agreed that a formal assessment was crucial. After evaluating potential partners, Fitch & Associates was selected based on their expertise and cost effectiveness. Dr. Steve Knight from Fitch & Associates has been deeply involved in gathering data, primarily from Alliance Mobile Health, to present an insightful analysis of our current EMS landscape. I now invite Dr. Knight up to present the executive summary.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you. Thank you for the introduction. Just a little bit about Fitch & Associates as a company. We've been around 40 years as a public safety consulting firm, and our original roots were specifically in emergency medical services. One of the benefits that we look to partner with communities like yours that ask the tough questions is because we actually have about 50% of our businesses in management services, meaning that we actually run and operate ambulance services around the country, as well as air medical programs, and we have the expert consulting side. So when we posit the data and the recommendations, we know they work because we actually are deploying them in real time. So we continually learn from that feedback loop from both management services and the consulting arm. So I just wanted to plant the seed for a level of confidence as we discuss these, that they're not hypothetical or theoretical, that we can anchor them in a strong foundation of a data-driven discussion. So with that, let me go ahead and give a high-level discussion about what's going on in the industry of emergency medical services. So of the top five priorities that we shared, that first one up there is ensure long-term fiscal and operational sustainability. And the reason I mention that, just to give a little bit of a primer of what we're seeing across the country in the industry, is that the revenue side of emergency medical services is what we would term as a capitated model, which means that the revenue is capitated or capped, if you will, by federal programs, state programs, Medicare, Medicaid, contracts with insurers, et cetera. So it's not uncommon to see, and I'll just use as an example, and it's pretty close to what we found in our study, you might have a $2,000 emergency medical services transport bill for the patient, but only collect for or $500 of that entire bill. So there's a lot of leverage debt that you write off at some point in the equation. The reason that's important, I bring that up, is because what you can't do is continue to raise your overall rates. So even though you charge $2,500 in that example, doesn't mean that you'll materially get a linear relationship for another $500 in collections. You may only get two more dollars or $1, et cetera. So there's no real relationship. So most of the agencies that have followed best practice and have maximized their rates have hit a stalemate, if you will, on the revenue side, and there's no avenue back out of that other than trying to find resource efficiencies. So that's the first element. Another element that we've seen is 10 or 15 years ago, the personnel costs and capital costs in the industry were significantly less for the private market than they were for a municipal provider with municipal benefits and things like that. There's been immense salary compression over the last 6, 7, 8 years that have really closed the gap between the cost centers between a municipal provider and what has traditionally been viewed as a private sector provider. Well, increasing exponentially on the expense side, capitated revenues has introduced instability in the EMS market. So depending on the degree of that instability, you can imagine that if it's an essential core service for most municipalities and there's market instability, generally that drives some kind of a policy discourse on what are the options for the municipal to make sure that they are providing the services that meet their expectations. Is that fair? So that leads us to the reason that this study was generated in the first place. And again, I applaud you for asking the tough questions of how do we best navigate for the future, understanding our risks that may exist in the marketplace. So moving on from there, the next piece is there's an opportunity as a priority to improve the EMS overall response times. So we believe there's a 4 to 6 minute potential improvement overall in response time, and we'll walk through why that may be important. And as a policy discourse, we're going to encourage you to evaluate the information that we gave. We tried to build kind of a broad perspective of alternatives for you. And make sure that you pick the desired expectations for service and those kinds of things that you're looking for. Next piece down is to develop objective, transparent, accountable performance criteria. And what this really is if there's a desire to move from a policy perspective to a municipal service provision, then it's going to be important to make sure that you have accountable metrics that are transparent, and you can tie that public accountability to the spend, to the performance, so that you can assure the community that you're getting what you're looking for. And the last piece of that is to outsource EMS billing. It's kind of a low-hanging fruit, but if you actually, if this has any merit to you as you have your policy discourse, then we would recommend that you deliberately outsource EMS billing and not try to make that as part of a municipal function. So if we talk about the response volume and busy time, and again, this is 2023 data provided by Alliance when we did this, so it's not the most current, but it did stop in 2023. There was about 7,200 incidents overall and about almost 13,000 vehicle movements. So because of the design of your deployment, you had multiple resources responding to single incidents. So that's not right or wrong, but under our design, if we get to that piece, you'll see that you can really reduce the number of resources that you're allocating to each EMS response. On average, the units spend about 53 minutes per call. It's a little different between a call that transports a patient and a call that doesn't, and we'll tease that out in a moment for you. And then at least in this year, in this data set, about 37% of the calls were categorized as needing advanced life support, which is advanced paramedic care, where they can provide additional airway management and pharmaceutical medications and things like that. So overall, all those metrics are pretty straightforward, just descriptive of what was actually occurring within your community. Now, when we look at the demand, if you focus on the chart that's all in blue there, what that is from 0, which is midnight, all the way to 2300, which is 11 p.m. It just shows your hourly call rate that has a peak period during the peak period of the day. So basically between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., you're going to run 2 or 3 times the calls that you run overnight. The general form of this is replicated in nearly every agency. It's just the only difference is, are we running 2 calls an hour or 28 calls an hour, right? It's just a matter of frequency, but the general form is there, and we actually attune the deployment a little bit to make sure that we take into account that you don't need the same level of service at all hours of the day. So it's a pretty lean position. The next piece, if you look at the upper right, is call concurrency or simultaneity, and this is a very important measure when you're designing a system, because what we found is between the data from 2019 to 2023, it was pretty consistent, only moved a couple percentage points up or down, but 58% of the time when there was an EMS call occurring, a second or greater call occurred at the exact same time before a resource was available. And that speaks to the depth of resources that you need within the community in order to handle the overall call volume. We also looked at the system volume distribution around the city. So this is in the industry referred to as a heat map. It really looks at, are there portions of the city that have a disproportionate value of concentration of calls versus another that would indicate that you could deploy in any different manner or address your risk separately across the community. overall, what this really shows in all of the blue is that you're running EMS calls in all corners of the city, and it really supports what we would refer to as a commensurate risk model, which means that everybody gets the same level of service across the community. And that's really what this would show. This one really just anchors that in a different format of looking at the call density by breaking up your community in half-mile grids. And we look at what we term as high-density call volume versus low-density call volume. All of the red areas are the high density. And you can see that your station placement is actually quite good. And because there is very little low density, we would just treat this from a system design as a commensurate delivery model so that everybody would get the same levels of service across the community. Now, we also evaluated the patient transports and just to see what kind of exposure there was in the system to contemplate how you would best model it. If you look at the one on the right, if you go all the way down to the bottom to the total line, the non-transports, if you went on an EMS run and the agency went there and they weren't going to transport, it took about 31 minutes in order to turn the call around, be back available for another call. If they transported to the hospital, it was at 72 minutes if they took them to the hospital. So those metrics are really well aligned with what we see in the industry. That's very typical lane for those to be at. So the benefits, the takeaway for this, even contemplating this, is that you have good proximity of your major two hospitals, in close proximity that doesn't eat a lot of time up that would have additional cost centers for you. If you look at the one on the left, the transport destination, we measured something called wall time, and that's basically, in the industry, we define that as how long does it take once an ambulance crew gets to the hospital, how long does it take them to offload the patient and come back available? And in all of the metrics there, you can see if you just focus on the top two hospitals, the vast majority of all the transports went to those top two hospitals, which is your close proximity, and they're outperforming what we're seeing across the nation as far as turning patients around and getting them off the ambulance cot and transferred to the hospital. So that piece is really good for you as an agency from, they're doing their part to be very efficient. If they weren't, it's more of an unfunded liability for the city because you would have to purchase more unit hours in order to overcome the inefficiency that was occurring in the hospital. So you guys are very well positioned by both proximity and how efficient the hospitals are performing. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So the EMS system performance, when we look at the overall response time, this chart measures it to the 90th percentile. Just to give a simple primer on that, if you're not familiar, if on average, for example, on average is usually somewhere between 45 and 55% of the time, right? If you just picture a normally distributed bell curve, right? We all remember that. The 90th percentile is saying that 9 out of 10 times or 90 out of 100 times, this is the level of service that it would be. So the reason the industry measures it the 90th percentile is because it's a high validity measure where if you report on the average, you're just saying 50% of the time we're going to meet this standard. When you design the system at the 90th percentile, you can say with high confidence it's going to be this level of service or better. And don't forget the or better part. So we broke out the total response time in several different things. I'll give a quick definition. The dispatch time is the time from when someone calls 911 until the unit is actually dispatched. In this data set, because it came from Alliance, the portion of time that occurs from when they call 911 and the city answers the phone before it's transferred to them is not captured here. So there might be another 45 to a minute and a half that occurs before that transfer. But overall, their dispatch time is about 3.3 minutes in 2023 overall for the emergent calls. And there's certainly an opportunity, best practice in the industry, even doing call prioritization and call triage would probably be under 2 minutes. So there's an opportunity for a little improvement there if it was under the city's umbrella, and it's one less transfer of a patient along the way of the caller. So that piece is beneficial as well. The turnout time is how quickly, once they're notified for a call, that they're actually driving and responding to the call. Those metrics are actually really well aligned with industry recommendations. It's not too far of a drift one way or the other. together, so we didn't remark about that at all. And then the travel time, that the current performance is at 10.1 minutes, and the total response time is 13.5 minutes. So the total response time, as you add all of those segments up, is what we call hello to hello time. So that's the time that the citizen or visitor calls 911 until someone actually arrives on scene and tries to deliver service. So just kind of spells out all the different segments. So there's opportunities in dispatch and travel time that will impact a good opportunity on the total response time, depending on the configuration, and we'll walk you through how that could go. So just to put a little context around response time, like should we be there in X minutes, should we be there in Y minutes, et cetera. Most communities never, didn't have the opportunity for a whiteboard approach to say we all met, we made a policy choice and we're going to be there in X. Usually it's an organic development, over years. We took on another station, we built a station, et cetera. So what the research shows, and this is all clinically based, evidence-based research for EMS systems, what the research shows is for the calls where there's a high risk of mortality, getting there in 5 minutes or less has a significant impact on that, on the high risk of mortality. Once you get distant from that 5 minutes, the risk of mortality levels out a fair amount all the way up through 12 minutes. And the 12 minutes was not significant. It was just the longest time that any agency was actually providing service was a 12 minutes in the study, I should say, in the study. So the takeaway there is, if you think about the total response time that we just talked about at 13.5 minutes, purchasing from 13.5 minutes to 10 minutes is not the same return on investment that you would get if you get closer to the 5 minutes. So there's good policy context around trying to navigate where you want to set your expectations and level of service. So if we talk about what kind of resources are required for you to meet the desired response time, and we looking at a bunch of different scenarios, and we measured from 6 minutes all the way through, I think, 12 minutes in the report. We resonated on 6 minutes that made the most sense for both the response time standard and the inherent investment that you needed by the resources. So a 6-minute travel time would get you to 92% of all the calls that occurred in the city within the desired time frame. And I will tell you the industry standard, much like we talked about 90th percentile on response time, when you're looking at capturing calls within the desired frame or the desired number of minutes, you'll spend exponential dollars chasing those last few percent. That's why we cap it at 90%. The entire community would get the same level of service. Some people are always going to be closer to a firehouse or an ambulance than other people, but when you look at it from a community lens, you're setting a standard that says 90% of everything gets the same level of service. Is that fair? Okay. So looking at the graph on the bottom, all of those green columns are all the hourly demand. So that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all the way through Saturday. And then the blue part is the geographic component for you to be there in 6 minutes. So when you add those together, both the geography and the hourly demand, it shows that you would need 4 resources, which is what that red line is, in order to accommodate being there in 6 minutes and the average hourly demand. Okay? So we built that out. You can see that that's an improvement by 4 minutes on the travel time alone. And then if you look at the map on the upper right, it just maps out what that 6-minute arc would look like. So all of the green area is the 6 minutes. The darker green is where both stations could actually respond in 6 minutes to the same geographic territory. And then all of the yellow is if ambulances were at any of the other stations when they got the call, that's the coverage that they have. So all of the yellow area could represent a maximum of 8%. So one of the challenges that we had when we went through this and worked with the chief and their staff is that the data that we received from Alliance didn't quite capture the mutual aid requests. So calls that were offloaded to another agency to respond with wasn't just inherently in the data. So we didn't have a pathway to track all those. So in the chief's discussion with other agencies around their peers and how many calls they ran, et cetera, we're estimating that it's probably over 9,000 rather than 7,200 because those mutual aid calls weren't captured in the core data. So to accommodate that in our planning, we added an extra unit just for the peak period of the day. So for the 12 hours during the peak period of the day, we would have a 5th unit, and then overnight you would still have your 4 units, and that will build a little extra capacity to handle those additional calls. And then the last piece on this element that we wanted to make sure we pointed out is that the UHU value is at 18%. And a UHU is a unit hour utilization. It's an industry metric that we use for time on task. And on 12-hour shifts, we would typically use 50% as the upper threshold for work, which means that under this system design, you have plenty of capacity to absorb any blind spots in the data or if call volume went up, et cetera. So you could absorb more work before you had to make a specific reinvestment. So we feel really good about the design that it really insulates you from any immediate reinvestment if you elected to go down this path. The next piece of this is what the industry has been looking to do because of what we talked about having exponential expenditures going up, limited revenue capability to draw in new revenue, is to slow systems down. So if you think about it theoretically, if I can cover 20-minute arc, right, then I may need less resources to cover 20 minutes than I need resources to cover 4 minutes or 6 minutes. What we wanted to test is what's the capability to slow the system down and make it more fiscally sustainable. What we found is if you were looking at the city of Troy, once you hit 8 minutes, you only needed 1 geographic launch pad, if that makes sense. So from 8 minutes on, there's no benefit to extending the response time, so it doesn't provide any fiscal relief. It just erodes probably the expectation for service. Is that fair? Does that make sense? Okay. So there's really no incentive to elongate it and look at anything else, and because you need those 4 units, you might as well enjoy the 6-minute travel time rather than artificially bumping it up to something of a longer duration. So now let's talk about the fiscal analyses that we put together. So we put together an administrative capacity that could handle a hypothetical EMS division for the city of Troy under the fire department. We built out additional dispatchers to handle the additional workload, doing call prioritization, administrative assistant to QA/QI, medical direction, et cetera. It's a fairly robust administrative configuration that will serve you very well, but also point out that you have a lot of flexibility in that design, that you could make internal decisions and probably move some pieces right or left for sure. And on the EMS personnel side, our recommendation is all ALS transport units, which is the advanced life support, which requires 1 paramedic and 1 EMT on each one of those resources. And then looking at the hourly rate, the city's fringe package, et cetera, the personnel cost for each unit would be about $756,000 per unit. And our real recommendation is 4.5 units. So you could see how that would extrapolate. So where does that really leave us? There's 2 avenues on the revenue. So let me at least talk about the revenue. Because we weren't provided historical revenue data, we use the national CMS database to project what your revenue is based on your area. And because our firm ran a ground ambulance and air ambulance billing company for about 10 years or so, one of our partners has that level of expertise and continues to do billing assessments and compliance audits and things like that. We thought that your community was a little more affluent than the CMS generic approach, and we added a little bit extra, still very conservative, but bumped up what the zip code would suggest and gave you a little bit more on your payer mix. Overall, that's why there's two sets of data, and that's why there's a range. So we just kept it as conservative as we can. But all of the first-year costs, that would include all the ambulances, the equipment, assuming that you were starting from scratch and you had nothing, to bring to the table or assume from another agency or anything else, would be about 4.0 to 4.3 million for that first year with all of the startup costs and to run it. And then after that, the depreciation for all of those, we have a whole amortization schedule where you would sink in a reserve fund, like, for example, cardiac monitors might be depreciated over 10 years, vehicles might be depreciated over 6 or 7 years, et cetera. So all of that, once you hit year 2, the recurring cost drops down to about 2.3 to 2.6 million a year. And then even on the revenue, I'll also point out it's also conservative from the standpoint that the 2,000 calls of mutual aid approximately are not included in the revenue because that wasn't part of the data set. So that additional, so you have some flexibility along the way. And then the last piece just to share is there are programs, one's called GEMT, and it basically trues up the Medicaid gap between the allowable costs and what you have, and it's only available to government providers. So there is an opportunity for the city, if this is a pathway that resonates, there's an opportunity for the city to tap into additional funding that isn't available to the system as it's configured today. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If you don't mind, I'll start.
Sure.
Just for clarification and for the general public, basically the feasibility study is looking at options of bringing EMS in-house, right, with 4 to 5 ambulances in 2 fire stations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just so the general public has a clear understanding.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Thank you. We had a great call. Thank you very much for your time today. And one thing that was helpful, just big picture question, and just to repeat this, go over the types of models that exist. So you had mentioned, and what we're using now is this private sector model, private sector provider model. That's what we have in Troy. And if you went with a municipal model, you can do a municipal paramedic run or a municipal fire run. Is that correct? And are there any other models out there that I should just be aware of?
Yeah, there's, I think you pretty much hit it. I mean, there's also nuances like whether it's hospital-based or, something else like that. But there is one other model that occurs in the industry. It's just that the price point would be nearly identical to you bringing it in-house. And that's a purchase unit hour model, or in some places in the country call it alliance model, where one of the challenges in the system with the market, the downward pressure on the market, usually performance is what gets eroded, right? As you have to balance the books, right? So you constantly have to balance the deployment, the response time and everything else to make it at least cost neutral, right? So one of the strategies to overcome that in the purchase unit hour model is that you could still have a public-private partnership, but you just purchase the performance on the front side, right? Rather than have it performance-based the way it is today, right? So that is one avenue that shores up your expectation for service. It's just that with all of the salary compression that we've seen in the market that I talked about on the front side, is the price point is nearly identical. So it's just a matter of policy choice. Yeah.
Okay, and then a follow-up question. Of those models, those types you shared, could you say what is the most common model in the state of Michigan or in our metro Detroit area?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So clearly, at least in Oakland County and around us, is fire-based EMS. So Troy, in reality, has become on an island. We are surrounded by nothing but fire-based EMS other than the city of Clawson. So at one time, all these agencies around us, these municipalities, used either a full-time with a private EMS or a paid-on-call fire with private EMS. But that has all transitioned over to full-time fire-based EMS.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So thanks for the great presentation, Dr. Knight and Chief Hellinger. I mean, we spent about an hour
Yes.
discussing this. So most of the questions are answered. So I just wanted to, for those who are watching, just wanted to summarize for what we discussed. I mean, I think we are talking about improving the response time from, I think the travel time from 10 point some seconds to, or minutes to 6 minutes, right? So you're looking at
Right.
compressing down to 4 minutes, and then also dispatch time, improving that by about a minute. So as a taxpayer, if I'm wondering what am I getting
Yes.
for this, is it fair to say about 5 minutes of improvement?
Yes.
At the 90th
At the 90th
percentile?
percentile,
Okay.
right.
So that's, just wanted to summarize that.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Teresa?
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you for making yourselves available earlier today, because that was very helpful for meeting with us. I do have a question about the insurance reimbursement. So I know that, Medicare, Medicaid provider fee schedule is actually set for a 2.8% cut starting in January. I don't know if EMS services are facing any other sort of cuts like that with reimbursement.
Yeah, they are. They just got a CPI bump, I think, last year,
Okay.
which usually comes around. But yes, it's just a matter of the cycle and, who's in charge and what decisions are made. One of the challenges with CMS, I think that we mentioned, not with CMS, but with EMS, is that EMS is only a very, very small portion, like 1.5% to 3% of the overall CMS spend. So EMS isn't in a great position to move a lot of the policy options to fix that. That's why the revenues have basically been fairly stagnant for decades. Yeah, the general revenue strategy has been pretty stable. Yeah.
Any other
you.
questions? Councilman Hubbard?
So are you seeing cities, municipalities across the nation in the same position we're in, where we need to look at options and be better prepared?
Yes, because again, speaking to and this is just generally across the country, but that market instability, agencies that have enjoyed a zero subsidy EMS provider for 20 years are now faced with subsidizing the provider, right? And that's what we're seeing across, because it's untenable otherwise, right? If I can't raise my revenue, right, because I'm capitated on that end, my expenditures have gone up significantly, other than communities accepting a lower level of service for me to attempt to get margin back, then the likely output is, or outcome is public subsidy. And that's really what we're seeing. So plenty of communities are getting letters or renegotiations from their ambulance providers saying, okay, if you want to continue to do this, and this is how much money we're going to need. What we're suggesting is that need is closely mirroring what you could do internally if you do it responsibly, like you all have contemplated. And at that point, you have a lot more flexibility as a policy group to discern what gives me the best balance between the risk I'm willing to assume, how much protection I can purchase, to what degree is accountability and control of service levels important to us from a policy group, and then navigate what's your best avenue to go. Yeah.
Councilman Hamel?
Can I follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
One quick follow-up.
Sure.
Administrative costs are something that, tend to hit you upside the head that you don't want to subsume, but obviously we would have to with this. One of the areas I noticed was specifically dispatch. I think you had referenced that currently that dispatch gets transferred. This would now be in-house, correct, as part of our communications team?
Yes. And the time that the provider now takes to triage the calls would be under the city's obligation. That's why we added a few positions because that time on task will increase in the communication center.
Councilman Hamilton?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for this very detailed, elaborate presentation. It helped us make a lot of sense of something where none of us here are experts on. What do nearby communities, comparable communities to us, Rochester Hills, Farmington Hills, Royal Oak, what are their response rates looking like right now under their models? And then you mentioned the GMT federal funding. How much do you think that could bring to us roughly?
Oh, I wouldn't want to put that on, on
Or
the
even
table.
like
Right.
complete ballpark. But yeah.
No, I really couldn't. There's a whole formula and every state addresses it differently. So I couldn't really put a table on that. Plus, one of the challenges, regardless of, like, it's easier to find the gap between the capitated costs and what your true costs are. But because it's generally a pool design, if 20 more agencies are in the pool next year, then your same costs are going to get a lesser return on investment. So it's kind of fluid. So I don't want to plunk anything on the table, but it's usually enough to help with one-time costs, some capital and things like that. Much like we discussed prior, we always recommend that those dollars aren't operationalized because, the federal government can make a decision next year that it goes away. So, yeah.
And then the other question, what are response rates looking like for our neighboring communities or communities in Oakland, Tri-County area that are similar to us?
Yeah, so I don't have that exact data, but I can just tell you from, we monitor all of the surrounding agencies, not knowing the processing time for the 911 call, but they're getting units dispatched and on scene in a relatively very short period of time compared to our numbers.
And a higher transport rate, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I do know, just from the meetings I've had with area departments and that, and looking at their information, their transport rates are significantly higher than what we've typically seen here.
Sure.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fire Chief.
I think we got one more, Mayor.
Oh,
Sorry.
oh, sorry.
And just to clarify, tonight, you're looking to just bring this information to us for us to process for later discussion on actually setting a policy or making a decision, correct?
Correct, yeah, and that's what I was going to wrap up with, is tonight was the presentation, public presentation of this information we've been working on for quite some time, and it was really in preparation of the advance, which is coming up in early 2025, where it can further be discussed and evaluated of how the city moves forward with EMS. And then just as a side note, we just want to clarify real quick, because we were talking, Dr. Knight was talking about fire stations and locations. That was just used as the location because they're physical buildings that aren't moving. Our current private provider will post ambulances in their parking lots and stuff, so that's why those locations were used. If we were to move forward with this, the volunteer fire department would be unchanged. So it would remain as a volunteer fire department. We are not looking to make transition to a fire-based EMS. This would be a private EMS division of the fire department with full-time employees. So I just want to clarify that we are looking different, or would look at something different than everybody else around us. This would be really, the only other model like this is the city of Detroit, which has Detroit EMS, the part of Detroit Fire. So.
All right. Thank you, Fire Chief Hollinger. Thank you,
All
Dr.
right,
Knight.
thank you all for.
All right. D, there's no carryover items. E, no public hearings. Next up is public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. I see we have 4 signed up. Same rule, 3 minutes. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute, and
Mayor
when
Pro Tem.
red.
Mayor Pro Tem. The people that have signed up under L.
What?
We don't have anyone signed up under F.
Oh, great, okay. Move on. There's no postponed items. Sorry, H. Move on to regular business. Board, let's see here. No Mario appointments. Board and committee nominations, none.
Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sir?
There is a city council appointment.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Ellen?
Pro Tem, I'll move that for you. Thank you. Resolved that Troy City Council hereby confirms the appointment of the following person to serve on the boards and committees as indicated: to the Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees / Retiree Healthcare Benefits Plan and Trust, the appointment of Kurt Bovenseep as ERS member for the term expiring 12/31/2027.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hollerich, supported by Councilman Brooks. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, no closed sessions. Let's see. I-4, dangerous buildings determination and recommendation to demolish abandoned home at 18 Bellhaven, introduced by Salim Herda, building official.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Pro Tem. For the public, my name is Salim Huerta. I am the Troy building official. I am here to talk about item I-104, 18 Bellhaven, a house that is now classified as a dangerous building. A two-page cover memo with attachments is part of the file and provides extensive information on the subject. However, I am here to answer additional questions to the best of my ability.
Any questions? Councilman Chandra?
Question. I think if, let's say we decide to approve this today, what's the course of action? I mean, is the owner of the property reachable? I mean, sounds like from there.
No, as the documents indicate, we did a lot of due diligence, and no, we are not able to locate the owner of record. However, we trace everything to Wells Fargo. They are aware. We sent several letters, and they are aware of that we're proceeding with what we're doing tonight.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman, Mayor Pro Tem. Just to clarify, what I read in the process is that we notify, and initially it's the responsibility of the owner, but if they do not take action within the time stated, then the city comes in and takes action. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Correct.
And just to ask, I mean, how common? Has this
Not
happened before
common at all.
drawings? I've never heard of this happening.
No, in fact, it's not common at all.
Any other questions? Anyone want to move I-4?
Mayor Pro Tem, you do have another question.
Oh, I do.
Oh, no, I just wanted to move it, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep, I will move I-4, dangerous building determination and recommendation to demolish abandoned home at 18 Bellhaven, as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hamilton, supported by Chandra, dangerous buildings determination recommendation to demolish abandoned home at 18 Bellhaven, introduced by Salem O'Herda, building official. Any discussion?
I know there are neighbors in that neighborhood that have watched this for many years, and the processes and governmental wheels of this type of thing understandably turn slowly, and I think there's going to be a really great relief in the neighborhood that we are able to take this action at this time. It's unfortunate that this has happened, but appreciate the work of our building department and helping bring this to us. There's still some time it could take for complete resolution, but this, I do know there are a lot of residents who will be greatly relieved.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
I-5, 2025 City Council meeting schedule, special introduced by Deputy City Manager Bob Brunner.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As City Council knows, the 2024 advance was postponed while the city manager search was wrapped up and is now being rescheduled in the first quarter of 2025. At the last City Council meeting, City Council expressed its desire to meet sooner rather than later. And based on responses from everyone, we've identified Saturday, January 11th as the earliest opportunity that council is available. We've also rebranded the meeting the Capitol Conference, which is not only a kind of a play on the Michigan Municipal League Capital Conference, when in that case, capital means Lansing. In this case, it means we're going to talk about capital, the city's capital needs based on previous meetings and conversations. It really seems like that's, you know, what we want to focus on. And so we renamed it to kind of differentiate it from what we've done in the past and help us define the scope of the meeting for what's proposed on Saturday, January 11th. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. And if not, you can go ahead and schedule a meeting.
Any questions? Anyone want to move I-5?
Oh, right here.
Oh, yeah, question.
Thank you.
Right,
Yeah,
Councilman Hamilton.
just one, I know Mayor Baker's not here. He's okay with this date, just to make sure, since anyone else would be able to object here. I'm fine with January 11th. Just want to make sure he's.
Yeah, I think he was the very first person to RSVP to
Okay.
provide his availability.
Good to know.
Yep.
Then I'm good. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, anyone want to move I-5?
I'll move it. Thank you, Chairman, Mayor Pro Tem. I'll move I-5 2025 City Council meeting schedule. So be it resolved that Troy City Council shall hold a special meeting on Saturday, January 11th, 2025 at 9 a.m. at the Troy Community Center, as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Support. Moved by Councilman Chandra, I'm sorry, Rebecca Chamberlain, supported by Councilman Chandra. Any discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business. We move on to consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda for further discussion? Councilman Hamilton?
I would like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hamilton, supported by Councilman Hollerich. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Krenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gunn?
Yes. Motion carries. If you're here for anything on the consent agenda, everything has been approved. Let's see, okay. No items on the agenda for memorandums or public hearing. We move on to public comments. There are 4 signed up. Again, 3 minutes. When the light turns yellow, you have 1 minute left. Joe Thilman.
I think I've been a resident of Troy since 1976, and I hold in my hand, I think what probably most of you recognize this as a pickleball paddle. This ball. And I'm here to ask you, when are you going to give us outdoor pickleball courts in Troy? We know that, so I ask a question. Do you want to appear to be a city behind the times? That's a question I ask of each of you. Why pickleball courts? They're going to make me happy. They're going to make older people happy, younger people happy. It is the fastest growing sport in the country. Did any of you know that? Maybe some of you did. It's going to make everyone happy. It gives socialization. I'm a person who likes to socialize. I have friends here. We all play pickleball together. Pickleball also gives you a chance to bring music and dance while you're waiting to play. So I question you, do you want to appear to be a city that is behind the times? Our other neighbors, Royal Oak, Birmingham, Sterling Heights, Rochester, Warren, they all have many, many outdoor pickleball courts. We have 4 that I know of at Redwood. There's very little parking there, so it's very difficult to play there. So where could we have these? We could have them at Firefighter Park, at Bulan Park. You don't want to put them in the neighborhood where the noise is going to bother the residents. I get that. So you want to have them in a park that's not going to be around a lot of houses. We have places like that. Firefighter is great. Bulan Park has they tried to make a couple of pickleball courts on the tennis courts. That doesn't work. We're still required there to play with the tennis nets, which don't work. They're too high. It doesn't work. We need to get some good outdoor pickleball courts. So I ask you, do you want to make our city one where it's attractive to other people? Services are available. We need to get more pickleball courts. I ask you, if you do approve this, I'll give anybody a free lesson. I've been playing a few years. It'll be a lot of fun, I guarantee that. So I ask you, give us some outdoor pickleball courts soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Next up is Neha Patel.
I'm a pickleball fan as well. Hi, my name is Neha. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm a pickleball fan club as well. We would really appreciate it if you guys think about it. He asked for outdoor. I'm also asking for indoor courts, pushing a little more. But we would appreciate it. It's a fun sport. It's a growing sport. And like he said, Rochester has it. We play in Rochester, Royal Oak. Troy is the only place missing. So we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Howard Trito.
Good evening, Mayor, fellow council members. I'll try and make this brief, but we do have to get more pickleball courts here. All the surrounding communities have them. There's 15 in Royal Oak. There's 12 in Rochester Hills. Birmingham just built 8 brand new ones. If you showed up at the Troy Community Center today, you'd find out there's 8 pickleball courts that are open play. There are 32 people on them, and there's 30 people waiting to play. There's a broad spectrum of people who play now. I've been beaten by 10 and 12-year-olds. I don't like to admit that. I blame it on my partner. But, it's for everybody. And we need to do something about this. It's my understanding. I spoke to you last year on, I believe, September 9th, and mentioned this, and nothing was really done, or it was never acknowledged. Here we are. It's been on the budget, I understand, 8 courts at Bowling Park since 2018, maybe before, and it's always been cut. And here we are behind the times. We're the city of tomorrow today, and that's not happening here. I would like to read some stuff about Grand Rapids, the Beer City Open. They got behind this to promote pickleball in 2018. And they did it as a fundraiser to improve pickleball courts and get more people to play. Well, this year they had the Beer City Open. They've had it for a number of years. It created 1,357 hotel rooms, generated $2.4 million in revenue. They also had another mid-season pro season championship, 7,000 spectators, ESPN2 broadcasted. That's another hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we can do that here. We've got, you're building new hotels, and we need to take advantage of that. You've accommodated the cricket fields, the Gene Stein Pavilion with $3 million of our taxpayer dollars. You can build 8 courts for $379,000, which Madison Heights is doing. And I urge you to put it in the budget this year, and let's get on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trito. All right, next up is Wayne Cow.
Good evening, City Council members, and good evening, everybody. So my message is very simple and easy to understand. Pickleball, pickleball, pickleball. Important thing, say 3 times. I started to play pickleball about a year ago with a number of dozens of other not my friends at that time, but we became friends already, just barely about within a year. And most people who are sitting there, I think, are a lot of my friends now. So, because pickleball is addictive. So addictive is not good for drugs, right? But pickleball is addictive. So I urge you to play, try to play. If you play a few times, that's Chua Community Center, that's my home, gym, you will love it. You have to have it, maybe not even may not be every day, but every week, you have to have it. So it's good for you, good for everybody. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bob Bruner, I believe we have an update on the pickleball?
Sure. As luck would have it, at the very last meeting, City Council received our financial results from the last fiscal year, and you know that we came in several $1 million under budget. We're right now planning on doing some community engagement during the winter months about where people want pickleball courts. We'll have as you just scheduled, the Capitol Conference for January 11th. Pickleball courts are a capital expense. So you can imagine we'll be touching on that at that next meeting. And so I anticipate that we'll actually be bringing forward a budget amendment to City Council in the first quarter of 2025 to take some action in when the weather warms up next year for construction. So do stay tuned.
Any City Council comments? Councilman Hamilton?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thanks everyone for speaking out. As Deputy City Manager says, I think this is good timing for this. I know I'm on board if we have the budget for it, which we very well may this year. January 11th is our our Capitol Conference, and it's on a Saturday morning if any of you want to show up and keep pushing us for this as well. But our budget discussions are in April, but I think we may, not for next year's fiscal budget, but we may be able to fit this in this year. So thanks everyone for bringing it up, and we'll keep this conversation going.
Councilman Holler?
Honestly, you don't have to come to our Capitol Conference to remind us. That's why you pay us the big bucks, right? We do understand that this is a need. I'm married to a pickleballer. I'm very familiar. I didn't realize dancing was involved. That might, I might have to take Mr. Tillman up on some lessons if it includes dancing as well. No, I know, I think I first brought this up when I was new on council 10 years ago. It might have been even 11. It was a growing sport that we needed to comprehend this. And our capital needs in the city over time kept moving this idea and other considerations, including the bandwidth of doing work in our parks. But it's definitely, I can't speak for all 7, but I think I can speak for all 7. We get it, we know it, and we are thrilled to be in a position to be talking about doing this way sooner rather than later. And I know at this point it feels like you have to come to keep pleading. I don't know if you'll believe me, but we hear you and we're representing it, and we will definitely work on it. I do have a question. We hear names of parks put out. My assumption is that from a parks perspective, we're even actually maybe entertaining some ideas that are out there that we would want to see engagement on. I don't know if we want to take a minute while we do have some folks here so they can understand what we're thinking about, maybe some of the early work we're doing on that, if we wanted to speak to that at all.
I don't want to speak to any locations under consideration, because basically the community engagement is going to be, where do you want to see them? And we've heard from audience members already about some of the big consideration, where there's parking, where there's restrooms is another consideration. Some of the parks are already very busy with other activities. But the folks that are interested in pickleball will be hearing more from city staff through the community engagement process.
Thank you, Chairman. Mayor Pro Tem. Just to follow up with Deputy City Manager Bruner, I presume also that engagement will involve connecting with the neighborhoods around those communities. I know a big takeaway when we were looking at the baseball public-private partnership was once we talked to some neighbors, it helped us rethink where we may consider. So just to make sure that also we will engage the neighbors, those project impacted peoples around those places.
Yeah, absolutely. The pickleballers may attest, it can be a little noisy when you hitting the pickleball with the pickleball paddle. And I guess I'll contradict myself and say, like, here on the Civic Center campus is one place near the community center where we could build pickleball courts, and the neighbors would be a parking garage and the community center. There wouldn't be any single-family residential adjacent. So that's definitely just one example of a location that would help avoid that conflict.
Excellent. And just wanted to follow up. So pickleball actually got me into trouble once. So Deputy City Manager Bruner, Clerk Dixon may remember once, I believe it was my first year on council or second year, 2020, 2021. So I know Mr. I believe Marius Mitrofan, some of you may know him. He is actually a national rated pickleball champion, lives here in Troy. His wife has been a longtime friend of mine. So we spoke, and he ended up, without me fully realizing, engaging probably like almost 100 people we had actually call in. And it was a time during COVID where we read all of the phone messages and emails. And so just so you know, your community has been engaging for years. And we've been asking, how can we make this happen in the budget? And as my colleagues had said, to learn more about why it's taken so long, this is the Capitol Conference. You might have heard, for example, all the competing needs that we have. You may have heard that electricity went out in the library. There's failing capital needs there. We're talking about EMS. So all these competing needs, but the good news is it looks like we may have some resources to move forward sooner than later. So Amaris Mitrofan, he's a very good friend, and I hope that you reach out to him and let him know that we are trying to move forward in that charge. And thank you for your perseverance. We're with you.
Councilman Chandra?
Yeah, I wanted to also add to that. I mean, I heard from many people, including getting a lot of emails, so we are on it. I think it's the right time to bring up. As was mentioned earlier, I mean, we are looking at it in January, all the capital needs. Hopefully we'll be able to accommodate this, but and the location is also important. But just also wanted to mention that in the community center indoor courts also, allow pickleball, so that's something you can use year-long. I know it's not same as outdoor. Outdoor obviously has its own charm, but that's available, and hopefully we can utilize that more during the winter months when you can't play outdoors. So, but thanks for coming here. We are on it. I hear you. We are on it. So.
Yes. As all my fellow councilmen have indicated, yes, we are very much supportive of the idea. Although I am intrigued about going to Grand Rapids and watching 1,300 people drinking beer and playing pickleball. Pretty interesting. All right, moving on. Let's see here. No council referrals. There are no reports. No council comments submitted. We do have one person who has signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from members outside the city of Troy.
Hold on, Mayor Pro Tem, we got council comments.
Can I do a council comment?
No, I'm sorry, sir.
Yep.
Okay. Hold on just a second. I just want to invite the public, all those who are here, departing, those watching online, and my colleagues. I want to invite all of you. So this is the festive holiday season, and a dear community of ours, the Bethesda Romanian Pentecostal Church, hosts their annual carols, and they're in a mix of English and Romanian. My husband has been long involved with that church. Pastor Simeon Timbuk has been a regular here. Often he gives every couple months an invocation. We'd love to see you all come. I'm inviting lots of friends near and far, and we have guests coming to visit from our own home church and from around. So hope you will join us the holidays.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. moving on to public comments for items on the agenda for members outside the city of Troy or business. We will have Vince Warwitz.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Gum and City Council members. I believe I may have signed up under the wrong section. I was trying to sign up under Section F, if the council is okay with me making a few comments. It's real short, but I know it's a little bit out of the order for the agenda, so I apologize for that. I must have made an error. I just wanted to thank Dr. Knight for his presentation. I think he had a lot of good information to share with everybody tonight. A lot of his presentation was fairly accurate, but we have been operating in the city for the last 20-plus years, so we understand the city, its demographic, and the details of how things operate in this area. So there are a few areas that we think that the report showed some inflated numbers, and other areas where they may have been depressed, skewing the results a little bit. And I just wanted to offer our assistance to the city council, and anybody else that may be involved in the decision-making process to help answer questions, provide additional information, answer questions for any details that may be in that study that may be foreign or confusing to anybody. We just wanted to be able to offer that assistance to you. We will be fully transparent and help in any way that we can. We've been operating here for over 20 years, and we love this city, and we just want to make sure that the service provided to the residents here is the very best it can possibly be. So, I do know that changing your model will definitely cost the taxpayers a few $1 million a year more, so our interest, like yours, I would assume, is to save the taxpayers as much money as possible. So we're very much interested in looking at different hybrid models and different ways that we can help assist the city achieve the goals that they're after. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's no closed session, so we are adjourned.